The silver cup struck the corridor wall less than a handspan from Mara's face, clattered across the stone floor, and spun beneath a bench. For one suspended second, no one moved. Then the young maid stumbled backward from the open doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm done," she whispered. The head steward caught her elbow. "Mara, I said I'm done." She pulled free and hurried down the corridor, shoulders shaking, while 3 servants flattened themselves against the wall to let her pass. One of them murmured, "6." No one asked what she meant. Inside the royal nursery, Prince Caelan Blackmoor stood beside an overturned table with both fists clenched. He was 10 years old, and breathing as though he had run the length of the castle. Gold had bled into the grey of his eyes. The nails of his right hand had lengthened into dark points before slowly beginning to recede. "Stop staring," he snapped. The servants looked down. Heavy footsteps sounded at the far end of the corridor. Whispers died, backs straightened. Even Caelan's breathing seemed to quiet. Alpha King Rhydian Blackmoor entered without escort, tall and broad-shouldered in black wool and dark leather, his black hair tied at the nape. A pale scar crossed one cheekbone. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His gaze moved from the dented cup to his son. "What happened?" "She was clumsy," Caelan said. The head steward stayed silent. Rhydian looked at him. "That was enough." "Mara asked to be reassigned, Majesty." Caelan folded his arms. "Good." Rhydian's jaw tightened. "Find someone else." The steward hesitated. "Majesty," he said carefully, "there is no one else willing." By noon, the order had reached the lower service halls. Liora Vale was sorting damp linen beside the laundry hearth when the head steward called her name. Steam curled through the stone room, carrying the smell of soap and wet wool. Around her, conversation stopped. Liora set down the sheet in her hands. She was 24, with long chestnut brown hair braided down her back and grey-blue eyes trained by experience to remain calm while other people decided what they thought of her. Her brown-grey linen dress was plain, its sleeves rolled to the elbows. Near the inside of her wrist, a thin, pale mark curved beneath her skin. Everyone knew what it meant. Rejected. The head steward cleared his throat. "You're being reassigned to the royal nursery." A woman beside the washbasin gave a short laugh. "Her?" Liora did not look at her. "She's rejected." Another servant smirked. "Maybe that makes her perfect. No mate. No pack waiting at the gate to complain when the prince chases her out." A few people looked away. No one told him to stop. Liora felt the words land exactly where they were meant to. She had spent years learning not to flinch when someone touched an old wound just to see if it still hurt. It did. She folded the sheet and set it on the table. "Am I being asked?" The head steward looked uncomfortable. "No." At least he was honest. "You are the only eligible servant who has not refused." The younger servant laughed under his breath. "Give her an hour." Liora looked at him. He stopped smiling first. She turned back to the steward. "When do I report?" "Now." The royal nursery occupied 3 rooms in the eastern wing. By the time Liora reached it, 3 different servants had warned her. Do not argue with him. Do not turn your back when his eyes change. And Mara, crossing her on the stairs, had whispered, "Don't let him see you cry." As she reached the nursery, Rhydian was coming out. The servants behind Liora lowered their eyes before he even looked at them. She bowed because protocol required it, but did not shrink. His gaze paused on her for one measured second, then moved on. That was all. The nursery door stood open. Caelan sat on the wide windowsill with a book across his knees. "You're late." "No one told me there was a time." That earned her a glance. His eyes traveled over her dress and braid, then stopped at her wrist. Liora saw the moment he understood. "They sent me someone nobody else wanted." The words were childish. The precision was not. For an instant, Garrick's voice rose from memory. No alpha with a future would choose a wolf that cannot fully rise. Liora pushed it down. Caelan watched, waiting. She set a stack of clean towels on a cedar chest. "Is there something you need, Your Highness?" He picked up a wooden cup from the small table and let it fall. It rolled toward her shoe. "Pick it up." Liora looked at the cup, then at him. "No." His brows lifted. "I gave you an order. You dropped a cup. Pick it up. If you want me to leave, ask." "I just did." "No. You tried to frighten me into doing it for you." Gold flickered in his eyes. "Everyone leaves." Liora bent, lifted the cup, and placed it on the table not because he had ordered it, but because she was finished looking at it on the floor. "Then perhaps stop giving them reasons." Silence. Caelan stared at her, then yanked the bell cord beside the window. The head steward appeared moments later. Liora expected Caelan to demand someone new. Instead, the prince leaned back against the stone, studying her with a cold little smile far too practiced for a 10-year-old. "Keep her." The steward blinked. "Your Highness?" Caelan never took his eyes off Liora. "I want to see how long it takes before she cries too." By the next morning, Liora understood why 6 maids had left. Caelan did not shout constantly. That would have been easier. He watched instead. He waited for weakness, found it, and pressed. He refused breakfast because the porridge was too hot, then complained when it cooled. He sent Liora across the nursery for a book within arm's reach, and smiled when she returned without comment. When a coal snapped in the hearth and made one of the younger servants flinch, Caelan noticed. "You're nervous," he said. The girl flushed. "Leave her alone," Liora said, adjusting the curtain ties. Caelan looked at her. "I wasn't speaking to you." "No. You were speaking to someone who cannot answer you safely." The younger servant stared at Liora, as though she had stepped onto thin ice. Caelan's expression hardened. But before he could respond, the midday bell sounded from the great hall. The royal midday meal was not an intimate family table. Visiting Alphas still remained at Frostmere after the winter council, and the long chamber was lined with dark banners, polished silver, and enough rank to make servants move more quietly than usual. Liora walked 3 paces behind Caelan. She had been given a small bronze nursery badge that morning, pinned near her collar to mark her temporary authority over the prince's daily routine. It was not much, but after years of carrying laundry and meal trays, the weight of it felt unfamiliar. She had barely reached Caelan's chair when a woman's voice cut across the table. "What is that on her wrist?" Liora stopped. Lady Seraphine Dacre sat beside one of the senior Alpha Lords, dressed in deep blue velvet with silver at her throat. Her eyes were fixed on the pale rejection scar beneath Liora's sleeve. The room did not become silent all at once. Conversation thinned first. A goblet touched wood. Someone stopped laughing. Seraphine leaned back. "She is rejected." Caelan looked toward Liora. Lord Morholt frowned. "And she attends the heir. The household appointed her," Rhydian said from the head of the table. His voice was calm, but every eye turned to him. Seraphine smiled without warmth. "Old household protocol is clear. An unbonded Omega under formal rejection is not to hold private authority over a royal pup without review." Liora felt the nursery badge suddenly grow heavy against her dress. Another lord said, "There is a reason such rules exist." Seraphine's gaze returned to Liora. "One Alpha has already judged her unsuitable. Must the crown discover why for itself?" A few servants lowered their eyes. That was the cruelty of court, Liora thought. No one had to laugh for humiliation to work. They only had to allow it. She looked at Rhydian. For one reckless second, she expected him to say something that would end it. He did not. "Protocol will stand until I review the appointment," he said. The head steward approached. "I'm sorry," he murmured. His fingers removed the bronze badge from Liora's collar in front of everyone. Liora did not look at Seraphine. She did not look at the servants watching. She bowed once. "Majesty." Then she walked out of the hall. She reached the service corridor before she allowed herself to breathe properly. The same old sensation settled beneath her ribs. Not grief exactly, but the knowledge that someone with more power had once again decided what she was worth while she stood close enough to hear. Behind her, the royal meal continued, for exactly 12 minutes. Then something shattered. Liora heard the crash from halfway down the corridor. A moment later, a kitchen maid hurried past carrying a tray against her chest. What happened? The girl gave Liora a wide-eyed look. The prince threw his plate. Liora closed her eyes briefly. Another servant appeared. He says he won't eat. A third voice called from the hall. He wants the old maid back. Liora opened her eyes. Old? The servant hesitated. His word, not mine. When she returned to the royal wing, Caelan was standing beside his chair with his arms folded. A replacement attendant waited several feet away, pale and furious. I said Liora. Caelan snapped. Rhydian stood near the hearth. His chase met hers. Leave us, he told the room. Caelan started to protest. You too. For once, the prince obeyed. When the door closed, Rhydian held out the bronze badge. Liora looked at it but did not move. Your appointment has been reviewed, he said. You are reinstated. You let them take it from me where everyone could see. His hand remained extended. I am returning it. In a room where no one can. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, recognition. The protocol should have been reviewed before you were placed with Caelan, he said. That is true. I corrected it. You corrected my assignment. His eyes narrowed slightly. There is a difference? Yes. Liora finally took the badge, but did not pin it on. You restored the work. You did not restore what happened in that room. Rhydian was silent. For the first time since she had entered Frostmere, the Alpha King looked as though someone had given him an answer he could not immediately place into order. Liora dipped her head. May I return to the prince? Yes. She turned toward the door. Liora. She stopped. Rhydian looked at the badge in her hand. I will remember the difference. She did not answer. She stepped into the corridor and pinned the badge back near her collar. At the far end, beneath an archway shadowed by winter light, Lord Warwick Blackmoor stood beside his steward. His gaze settled first on Liora, then on the badge. When she disappeared into Caelan's room, Warwick turned to Orson. Watch her. The bronze nursery badge drew more attention than Liora expected. By afternoon, 2 servants had glanced at it, and then at her wrist, as though the castle had not decided which mark mattered more. Caelan noticed too. You put it back on. Liora sorted lesson books near the window. That is generally what badges are for. I thought you were angry. I was. You still came back. She looked at him. Those are not opposites. Caelan frowned. For most of the morning, he behaved almost well. Quiet gave him time to plan. By late afternoon, snow tapped against the nursery windows. Caelan sat pretending to read while Liora repaired a torn cuff from one of his training tunics. You sew badly, he said. You read badly. I am a prince. That has not improved your reading. His mouth twitched before he caught it. Then a crash sounded in the corridor. A metal coal bucket had slipped from a servant's hands. Caelan jerked so violently his chair struck the wall. The change came instantly. Gold flashed through his grey eyes. His fingers locked around the table edge. Caelan, I'm fine. His nails lengthened. Liora set the tunic down. Look at me. Don't. He shoved away from the table. The chair toppled backward. Liora moved slowly, keeping her hands where he could see them. You are not in trouble. I said stay back. I'm staying back. You're lying. His breath came faster. Liora saw it then, not rage rising first, but panic. Caelan backed towards the hearth, trapped between the wall and the overturned table. Tell me what you need. I need you to shut up. He swiped at her when she reached for the iron poker near his foot. His hand moved faster than she expected. Pain burned across her forearm. 3 shallow red lines opened beneath her sleeve. Caelan froze. For a heartbeat, the prince vanished, and there was only a frightened 10-year-old staring at what his own hand had done. His mouth opened, but no apology came. Shame hardened across his face almost as quickly as fear had appeared. The wolf gold vanished from his eyes. He stared at the blood. "Get out." Liora pulled her sleeve away from the cuts. "Caelan, get out. You were afraid." "I wasn't. You were." His face went white. "Stop saying that. Then stop making fear everyone else's punishment." The door behind her opened. Rhydian stood there. He had heard enough. "Caelan." The prince looked down. "Go to your bedchamber." "I didn't." "No." Caelan obeyed, but looked once more at Leora's arm before the inner door shut. Rhydian's attention moved to the blood. "You were injured. I had noticed. This is not amusing." "I wasn't joking." His eyes lifted to hers. "Then explain why you challenged him while he was unstable." "I told him the truth while he was frightened. He is 10. Yes, he is also the heir to this kingdom. And that is why everyone keeps teaching him to hide what he feels instead of understanding it." Rhydian went still. Liora knew she should stop. She did not. "Your son knows how to obey you. He does not know how to trust you." Silence settled between them. Rhydian could have dismissed her or taken the badge again. Instead, he said, "Sit down." Liora blinked. "That was not a punishment." "Your arm is bleeding." She sat. Rhydian crossed to the medicine cabinet. "You have healers. They are in the West Wing. You have servants. So do you." He returned with clean linen and salve. Liora held out her arm. His hands were careful. For a man who could silence a hall by entering it, Rhydian touched the torn skin as though force were something he knew how not to use. "Does this hurt?" "Yes." He loosened the bandage slightly. "Are you truly not afraid of me?" he asked. "I am." His hands stopped. "Then why do you speak to me as if you are not?" "Because fear simply does not get to make every decision for me." Rhydian's thumb paused against the linen. For 1 second, the room felt smaller. Liora became aware of his nearness, of the restraint in hands strong enough to command armies. Then he looked away first. For the first time, Rhydian looked at her without the distance of a king examining a servant. Something quieter entered his expression. Respect. He tied the bandage and released her arm. "Keep the wound clean." "I know. I am beginning to suspect you always do." Then he left. The bandage felt unexpectedly warm where his fingers had just been. The next morning, Caelan's shift instructor arrived, shortly after breakfast. So did Orson. Varric's steward carried a narrow glass vial filled with amber liquid. "For the prince," he said. Liora smelled something bitter beneath the honey. Earthy. Sharp. "What is it?" "A calming tonic." Caelan drank it with obvious dislike. 23 minutes later, during a breathing exercise, gold flashed in his eyes again, and the bones of his right hand began to shift. That evening, after Caelan had gone to bed, Liora sat alone at the nursery desk. On a scrap of paper she wrote, "Tonic, 23 minutes, partial shift." She stared at the words, thinking of the bitter earth smell. Then she folded the paper once. A shadow moved across the doorway. Liora looked up. Orson stood there, watching her. Orson did not ask what Liora had written. He stood in the nursery doorway for only a moment, his expression unreadable, then inclined his head and walked away. That disturbed her more than a question would have. The next 2 days gave Liora enough to confirm one thing. Caelan's worst moments did not begin with anger. They began with fear. He slept with a lamp burning beside his bed, although he mocked younger servants for being afraid of the dark. He refused to enter the training chamber when thunder rolled over Frostmere. Whenever an instructor spoke of control, discipline, or the honor of the royal wolf, his shoulders tightened before his temper rose. And every time Orson's amber tonic appeared, the change came faster. Liora kept the observations in her head now. She no longer wrote them down. On the 3rd evening, rain struck the nursery windows hard enough to make the glass tremble. Caelan had been pretending to read for nearly an hour. A flash of lightning whitened the room. The book slipped from his hands. "Leave the lamp," he said. Liora had not touched it. I wasn't putting it out. I know. Thunder followed. Caelan's fingers curled into the blanket beneath him. Liora sat near the hearth rather than moving closer. What happens when your wolf comes? His face closed. Nothing. You look like you expect something. I said nothing. Another flash. This time he whispered, I become her. Liora waited. Caelan stared at the lamp. My mother. The words came flat, almost practiced. She changed the night she died. Her eyes went gold. She couldn't stop it. Liora felt something inside the room shift. Did someone tell you that was what killed her? No. Then, how do you know? His jaw tightened. I saw enough. Before she could answer, his eyes dropped to her wrist. What did your wolf do? Liora went still. Caelan pointed at the pale rejection scar. That, for years, people had asked the question as accusation or curiosity. Caelan asked it like a child comparing wounds. My wolf did not rise properly, she said. Couldn't you shift? Not fully. What did your mate do? He decided that made me unworthy. Caelan looked at her. Was he right? The question was so direct it almost hurt. No, you said that quickly. I have had time to practice. Caelan's expression shifted. Liora leaned back. Someone rejecting you does not make their judgment true. The prince looked away, but his grip on the blanket loosened. Later, after Caelan had fallen asleep, Liora stepped into the corridor and found Rhydian near the window. You heard? Enough. His gaze moved to her wrist. The man who rejected you? Yes. Rhydian was silent for a moment. Do you still believe what he said? Liora almost gave him the easy answer. No. Instead she said, some days, something in his face changed. He lifted one hand, then stopped before touching her. May. She knew what he meant. After a moment, she turned her wrist upward. His thumb rested just below the scar. The contact was light. Still, Liora felt it through her entire arm. Rhydian studied the mark as though it were evidence of something done to her, rather than proof of something wrong with her. That should never have been used to define you. Liora looked at him. Would you still notice me if Caelan no longer needed me tomorrow? His hand stilled. She had not planned to ask. That made the silence worse. Rhydian's eyes met hers. He opened his mouth. Nothing came, not quickly enough. Liora withdrew her hand. I understand. Liora, you don't need to answer now. That is not what I meant. But it is what you answered. She walked away before he could stop her. Rhydian remained by the window. He had faced border raids and council revolts without hesitation. None had left him searching for an answer after they were gone. Liora made it halfway down the corridor before anger replaced embarrassment. She had wanted him to say yes. That was the humiliating part, not his silence, but the fact that she had begun to care what answer he gave. The next morning, Lord Varric did not visit the nursery. He went to the council chamber. By midday, Frostmere was already whispering. The prince had made no measurable progress toward a controlled shift. His dependence on one servant had become, according to Varric, a private comfort elevated above a royal obligation. Rhydian rejected the accusation. Varric answered with concern rather than challenge. That made him harder to oppose. He spoke of duty, preparation, and the danger of allowing affection to delay what every royal heir was required to face. He never accused Liora of wrongdoing. He merely made her presence sound like evidence that Rhydian had lost perspective. Varric did not need the king to accept it. He only needed enough lords to fear an unstable heir. Before sunset, a sealed notice arrived in the nursery. Rhydian came himself. Liora was beside Caelan's desk when he broke the wax. His expression hardened as he read. What is it? Caelan asked. Rhydian looked at his son. The council has advanced your preliminary shift evaluation. Leora's stomach tightened. When? Rhydian folded the notice once. Tomorrow morning. Caelan went completely still. The color drained from his face. Outside, thunder rolled again beyond the castle walls. Morning came too quickly. The preliminary shift chamber lay beneath the eastern tower. a circular room of black stone with a silver-marked training ring set into the floor. By the time Liora arrived, 3 instructors were already waiting beside the wall. Lord Varric stood near the observation rail with Orson behind him. Rhydian was inside the circle with Caelan. The prince looked smaller there, shadows beneath his eyes and hands opening and closing. "This should not happen today," she said. Rhydian turned. "Not here." "Then where?" "After they begin." Rhydian stepped outside the circle and lowered his voice. "The council has exercised its authority. I cannot simply ignore the order. You can stop pretending this is about readiness." His expression hardened. "Liora, you are doing this because the council frightened you. I am responsible for a kingdom. He is Ton, and one day he will be responsible for that kingdom, only if you let him survive being 10 first." Something flashed in Rhydian's eyes. "You will remain outside the circle." The words landed differently. Not a request, a command. Liora held his gaze. Maestu. It was the first time she had used the title like a wall between them. Orson entered carrying the familiar amber vial. Around its neck was a narrow black wax authorization band stamped with Varric's double wolf seal. The left wolf's ear bore the same tiny defect Liora had noticed on documents he had sealed in council. "What is that?" "The prince's calming tonic." "Not today." Orson looked past her to Rhydian. "It has been part of his preparation for months." Caelan stared at the vial. "I don't want it." Varric finally spoke. "A prince cannot refuse every discomfort placed before him." Liora looked at Rhydian. For 1 second, she thought he might stop it. Instead, he said, "Half the usual dose." Orson poured the tonic into a small cup. Caelan drank with a grimace and handed it back before finishing. Orson reached for the remainder. Liora took the vial first. "I'll dispose of it." "That is unnecessary. So is arguing over what is left." She capped the vial and slipped it into the pocket of her apron. "Orson, stay here." Liora ignored him. Before the instructors called Caelan into position, she wrapped a strip of linen around the stopper, careful not to disturb the black authorization band around the vial's neck. She melted a bead of wax from the nursery candle she carried for his lessons and pressed the edge of her bronze badge into it. A shallow, scratched imprint remained. One shift instructor watched her seal it and glanced at the badge mark before turning back to Caelan. Then she put the vial back into her pocket. For 10 minutes, Caelan followed instructions, and his eyes remained grey. At 14 minutes, his hands began to tremble. At 18, gold appeared around his pupils. Liora's stomach tightened. "Stop the evaluation." No one moved. Rhydian watched his son. "Caelan, look at me." The prince's breathing quickened. One instructor stepped forward. "Do not resist the change, Your Highness." Caelan flinched. His nails lengthened. The bones of his shoulders jerked beneath his shirt. "Stop," Liora said again. Varric's voice came from the rail. "If every partial shift ends the moment he becomes uncomfortable, what exactly are we testing?" Caelan made a sound low in his throat. "Not anger. Terror." An instructor reached for a silver restraint. Liora moved. Rhydian caught her wrist. "I told you to stay outside. He is panicking. He has to learn control. He cannot learn while he thinks he is dying." Caelan screamed. Liora ripped her wrist free and crossed the silver line. "Caelan." His head snapped toward her. For half a heartbeat, she saw recognition. Then the wolf surged. He struck out blindly. Pain exploded along Leora's side. She hit the stone hard enough to lose her breath. Someone shouted. Boots and metal filled the room as Rhydian ordered everyone back. Liora pressed one hand to her ribs and felt warmth beneath her fingers. Caelan stood in the center of the ring, half-shifted, staring at the blood on his hand. The gold vanished. His claws shortened. "No." His voice cracked. "No, no, no." He dropped to his knees. For the first time since Liora had met him, Prince Caelan Blackmoor began to cry. He folded in on himself and sobbed like a child who had just seen the future he feared become real. "You should leave," he said when Liora managed to sit up. She breathed through the pain. "Maybe I should." His face crumpled further. But if I stay, you do not get to pretend this did not happen. He looked at her. I hurt you. Yes, I'm going to become her. Liora still. Caelan wiped his face with the back of his hand. My mother. That night her eyes were like mine. She changed, and she couldn't stop. There was blood. Everyone was screaming. Then she died. You think the wolf killed her? I think it will make me like her. Leora's chest tightened. What happened to you was not your fault. Caelan stared at her. What you do because of it is still your responsibility. He lowered his head. Rhydian had gone very still behind them. For the first time, Rhydian looked less like a king than a father who had failed. Later, in the medical chamber, a healer cleaned the cuts along Leora's side and wrapped her ribs. When they were finally alone, Rhydian stood beside the bed. I should have listened. Liora looked at him. You did listen. His jaw tightened. You simply chose not to believe me. I had obligations. You knew I thought he was not ready. I did. And you did it anyway. Rhydian had no answer. That silence hurt more than her ribs. Much later, after the training chamber had been emptied, Orson returned. He checked the table, the discarded cups, the medicine case, then the place where the amber vial should have been. That night he stood in Varric's private study. The Omega kept it. Varric looked up slowly. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he set down his glass. Then stopped treating her like a servant. Orson waited. What should I treat her as? Varric's expression cooled. A threat. The pain along Leora's ribs had settled into a deep ache by morning. The healer had ordered rest. Caelan ignored that order long enough to appear at the medical chamber door before breakfast, pale and silent, with Rhydian behind him. Liora pushed herself higher against the pillows. Caelan stared at the bandage beneath her loose gown. I'm sorry. It was the first apology she had heard from him that did not sound forced. I know. His eyes lifted. That does not make it disappear, she added. But it matters that you said it. He nodded once. Rhydian rested a hand on his son's shoulder. There is something you should both know. He kept it brief. After Queen Elowen died, the royal healers had found traces of an unidentified substance in her blood. They could not name it, could not prove who had given it to her, and the investigation eventually closed for lack of evidence. Rhydian had buried the uncertainty because the kingdom had been unstable and Caelan was already grieving. Caelan went very still. You never told me. No, Rhydian said. I should have. When Caelan left with the healer, Liora waited until the door shut. The tonic. Rhydian looked at her. You think there is a connection? I think there is enough to ask why his worst episodes follow it. Where is the vial? With me. Give it to the royal apothecary. No. His expression changed. Liora, I will have it tested. But I am not handing over the only thing I kept from that room until I know who can be trusted. You do not trust me. Not enough. Silence sharpened between them. You think I would take it from you? Liora met his eyes. I think you could. That struck harder than anger would have. Rhydian stepped closer. I would not. Then do not be offended that I need more than your word. For several seconds neither moved. Then Rhydian looked away first. I do not want you to leave Frostmere. Her pulse shifted. As king? No. The answer came immediately this time. Liora remembered the corridor days earlier, his silence when she had asked whether he would notice her without Caelan. This was not the same silence. Then ask me as a man. Rhydian's gaze returned to hers. Stay. One word. No title behind it. No command. Liora knew she should make him wait. Instead she said, for now. Something eased in his face. He came close enough that she could feel the heat of him before he touched her. His hand lifted, paused beside her cheek, and waited. Liora closed the remaining distance herself. The kiss was not gentle because either of them was uncertain. It was gentle because both were careful with what it meant. Rhydian's thumb rested beneath her jaw. Liora caught the front of his dark tunic in one hand, then loosened her grip when the pull along her ribs reminded her of the injury. He broke the kiss at once. Did I hurt you? No. Your face says otherwise. My ribs object to almost everything. A breath of laughter left him. For a short while, the room felt strangely ordinary. Rhydian sat beside the window while Liora drank the bitter healer's tea. They spoke about Caelan's next lessons, not shifting, only reading and breathing exercises. Rhydian agreed that no tonic would be given until the records were reviewed. More importantly, he did not ask for the vial again. When Liora rose later, he offered his hand but did not insist when she steadied herself against the bedframe instead. At the door, he said, I meant what I said. So did I. About staying? About needing more than your word. He nodded, and for the first time since entering Frostmere, Liora allowed herself one dangerous thought. Maybe he really was trying. She even considered showing him the sealed vial herself the next morning, not surrendering it, only letting him examine the badge mark so they could decide together whom to trust with it. By evening, the thought had become a weapon in someone else's hand. A royal guard came for her just after supper. The council has convened an emergency inquiry. Liora found Rhydian already inside the chamber. Varric stood opposite him. On the table lay a written complaint. Varric's voice was calm. The Omega removed royal medicine from a supervised evaluation, disobeyed a direct command, entered the shift circle against instruction, and now refuses to surrender potential evidence. She preserved it, Rhydian said, or altered it. Liora's jaw tightened. Varric continued. Your son now refuses attendance he once tolerated unless she approves them. Your Majesty's personal interest in her is already being discussed outside these walls. Rhydian's expression darkened. A senior lord pushed a parchment forward. Until the medicine is examined and the security question resolved, Crown custodial right applies. Liora looked at Rhydian. She knew from his face that he understood exactly what the law meant. No, she said, not to the council, to him. Rhydian's hand closed around the pen. For one terrible moment, she thought he would set it down. Then he signed. The guard removed the bronze nursery badge from her dress. You are suspended from royal service pending inquiry, the Lord said. You will remain in assigned quarters. No contact with the prince. No departure from Frostmere. Liora heard the words, but she watched only Rhydian. Hours earlier, he had asked her to stay. Now he had made leaving impossible. The guards escorted her to a chamber in the eastern residential wing. Rhydian followed. At the threshold, he said her name. Liora turned. You should have let my answer be enough. The door closed between them. Rhydian remained outside. He did not open it. Liora did not sleep. The room was comfortable enough to make the confinement feel almost insulting. There was a fire, clean linen, a basin of warm water, even a tray of food she never touched. But a guard stood outside the door. Another waited at the end of the corridor. Her bronze nursery badge was gone. And every time she shifted against the mattress, the bandage around her ribs reminded her exactly why she had crossed the training circle in the first place. The vial remained hidden inside the inner pocket of her dress. No one had searched her, not yet. At dawn, someone tried the handle from outside. Liora sat up. Rhydian entered alone. He looked as though he had not slept either. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, I came to lift the order. Liora laughed once, without humor. That was fast. His face tightened. You should never have been confined. No. I thought keeping you inside Frostmere would keep Varric from reaching you while I controlled the inquiry. There it is. What? The word. Rhydian frowned. Controlled. Liora rose carefully. Pain pulled beneath her ribs, but she refused to remain seated for this. You said you were protecting me. I was trying to. No. You were trying to keep me where your fear could reach me. He flinched. I had a council demanding answers, a son whose blood was on your clothes, and evidence I did not understand. And you decided being afraid gave you the right to make me afraid, too. The words landed between them. They both heard Caelan in them. Rhydian looked toward the closed door. Liora continued before he could answer. You asked permission before you touched my scar. His gaze came back to her. You asked me to stay? I said yes. Her voice almost broke there. Almost. Then, a few hours later, you signed away my right to walk through a door. Liora, no apology can make those things the same. I know. That stopped her. Rhydian did not step closer. I know, he repeated. And opening this door does not undo the fact that I closed it. For the first time since he entered, Liora saw no defense in his face. Only consequence. He opened the door. The guard outside straightened. Stand down, Rhydian said. Maestu? Liora Vale is no longer under custodial restriction. Rhydian looked down the corridor. Send for the council. Full session. Now. Within the hour, Liora stood at the rear of the council chamber, while Rhydian faced the same men who had watched him sign the order the night before. Varric was already there. So were Lord Dacre, Lord Morholt, and Lord Farlan. Rhydian did not sit on the throne. Crown custodial right is suspended effective immediately, he said. Formal repeal proceedings begin today. The chamber erupted. Lord Dacre stood. On what authority? Mine. You would discard a security law used by this house for generations because one Omega objected to it? No. Rhydian's voice remained level. I am suspending it because I used it exactly as written, and in doing so proved why it should not exist. Silence followed. Rhydian continued. Liora Vale had not been charged with a crime. She had not been shown evidence against her. I confined her because the law allowed me to replace due process with my fear. Varric watched him with unsettling stillness. Morholt leaned forward. And if she leaves, with royal evidence? She is free to leave. Liora felt every eye turn toward her. Rhydian did not. That freedom is not conditional on whether her choice benefits me. Valen stood next. Then House Valen withdraws its support from the crown position on the heir's winter moon extension. Dacre followed. So does House Dacre. Morholt's expression hardened. And Morholt. The room changed. Rhydian knew what those three declarations meant before anyone needed to explain them. So did Varric. If Caelan failed the winter moon trial, the votes that had once guaranteed him another year were gone. A succession review could begin immediately. For one brief second, Rhydian closed his eyes. Then he opened them. The suspension stands. Liora looked at him across the chamber. Something inside her hurt more cleanly than anger. This was what she had wanted him to understand. He understood it now. It still did not restore what he had broken. By midday, her few belongings were packed into one small bag. Caelan came running into the service courtyard before she reached the gate. The guard behind him looked horrified. Liora. She stopped. His eyes dropped to the bag. You're leaving? Yes. His face tightened. Because of me? No. Because of my father? Liora looked past him. Rhydian stood beneath the archway, far enough away that the answer remained hers. Yes. Caelan swallowed. Are you coming back? I don't know. He looked as though he wanted to demand a different answer. He did not. Instead, he whispered, I'm sorry. Liora crouched carefully despite the pull in her ribs. For what you did in the circle. He nodded. You already apologized for that. For everything before it, too. That was new. Liora touched his shoulder. Then become someone who does not need to keep saying it. Caelan nodded, eyes wet but steady. When Liora straightened, Rhydian had not moved. She walked toward him. He held out the bronze nursery badge. Liora looked at it, then closed his fingers around it. Keep it. His jaw tightened. Opening the cage does not erase the cage. I know. She waited. He did not ask her to stay. That hurt too, but it was the first pain he had allowed her to choose for herself. Liora walked through the gate, carrying the sealed vial, and did not look back. An hour later, a council clerk entered Rhydian's study with a revised succession tally. The numbers were worse than expected. Rhydian read them twice. Across the room, Varric glanced at the parchment and smiled without warmth. Then we should both pray the boy does not fail. The road away from Frostmere hurt more than Liora expected. Not because she regretted leaving, because every mile proved Rhydian had meant it when he let her go. By the time she reached Mayrowan's village the following evening, the bruising along her ribs had darkened beneath the bandages, and the sealed vial in her inner pocket felt heavier than the bag on her shoulder. May took one look at her and said, "You look terrible. I have had worse welcomes. You have also had better judgment." May had taught Liora herbs years before. Age had silvered her hair, not softened her eyes. Liora placed the vial on the work table. May examined it without touching the seal. Varick's black authorization band still bore the double wolf imprint and its small defect. Liora's nursery badge wax over the stopper remained unbroken. "You sealed this yourself?" In the training chamber, one of the instructors watched. May wrote down the condition of both seals before either was disturbed. "Good. If anyone asks, this is how it reached me." Only then did she break Liora's wax, leaving Varick's authorization band intact, and open the vial. Her expression changed after she smelled the tonic. "Moonroot?" "I suspected." May tested a heated drop, then frowned. "I can tell you what I suspect. I cannot give you something a royal council will accept." "What would?" "A verified comparison. Only one man near Frostmere could provide that." Master Cynric opened the door of his apothecary workshop, saw Liora, and tried to close it again. "I have nothing to say." Liora put her hand against the door. "You released Moonroot." His face drained of color. "I did no such thing." She showed him the vial. His eyes went at once to Varick's black authorization band. That was enough. "You know what it is." Cynric looked into the empty street. "If I speak, I admit I broke protocol. If you stay silent, a 10-year-old boy may lose his inheritance because someone made him sick and called it weakness." He looked away. Liora softened her voice. "You were afraid when you released it. I understand fear. I do not accept what we do to other people because of it." A long silence. Then Cynric let her inside. His old medicine chest had been forced open. Several nearby papers burned. Orson came looking. But Cynric crossed to a shelf, pulled down an old remedy book, and removed folded sheets from its loosened binding. 3 Moonroot releases. Varick's authorization. Orson named as receiver. Cynric still had verified Moonroot in locked stock. With May present, they compared it to the tonic May had opened and documented. The result was clear. Concentrated Moonroot. May studied the reaction in the glass. There was something similar in the questions royal healers sent after Queen Elowyn died. Similar? Enough to reopen the question. Not enough to answer it. Liora nodded. That was all they needed. At Frostmere, Rhydian discovered that doing the right thing did not make the consequences less real. House Dacre withdrew 2 council votes. Morholt recalled its senior representative. Valen formally refused to support an automatic extension if Caelan failed the Winter Moon trial. Rhydian read every notice. Before the repeal, those same houses had guaranteed Caelan an extension if the Winter Moon trial went badly. Now the numbers no longer protected his son. One signature could have preserved the old law and kept those votes. Rhydian knew it. He reversed none of his decision. Twice his captain asked whether riders should be sent to locate Liora. Twice Rhydian said no. The second time, the captain hesitated. "Majesty, if she has the vial, she is free." The words cost him more than the captain could know. That night, he passed the medical chamber where he had kissed her and stopped at the doorframe. He remembered asking her to stay, then remembered the lock closing between them. For one savage instant he wanted horses saddled and Liora brought back. He let the impulse pass. Wanting her was no longer an excuse to decide for her. In the nursery, Caelan had stopped asking when Liora would return. Instead, Rhydian noticed what the boy did without her. When a servant dropped lesson tablets, Caelan did not mock her. When panic rose during breathing practice, he counted slowly until the gold faded from his eyes. And when Orson appeared with another amber vial, Caelan looked at it and said, "No, Orson stiffened. It was authorized. So was hurting Liora." The steward left without giving him the tonic. That evening, Rhydian sat alone at the nursery desk and found the bronze badge still in his pocket. He turned it over once. Then he wrote a letter. He did not write "come back." He did not write "I need you." He wrote only, "The order is gone. No one from Frostmere will follow you. You owe this castle nothing. You owe me less." The letter reached May's cottage 2 days later. Liora read it beside the window while rain moved softly across the fields. She read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it beside the evidence. It did not undo the locked door or Rhydian's signature. It did not make her miss him less either, which angered her more than she wanted to admit. But for the first time since leaving Frostmere, Liora could see that he was changing without knowing whether she would ever reward him for it. May entered carrying a small box containing the vial and Senric's duplicate records. "Senric will testify," she said. "If the council agrees to hear everything, they will." "You sound certain." "I will make them." May studied her. "What will you do?" Liora picked up the box. "I'm going back." May's eyebrows lifted. Liora looked toward the road that led south to Frostmere. "For Caelan." Liora returned to Frostmere beneath a grey morning sky. No guards rode out. No royal carriage waited. The gates were open, and for one strange moment that mattered more than anything else, she walked through them carrying May's evidence box beneath one arm. By the time she reached the inner courtyard, 3 servants were pretending not to stare. Caelan did not pretend. He came down the eastern steps so quickly that a guard nearly caught his shoulder. "Liora." She stopped. The prince looked tired but steadier. "You came back for the council." His face fell slightly. Then she added, "And for you." Rhydian appeared at the top of the steps. "You came back," he said. "For Caelan." The words landed. Rhydian only nodded. "The council is assembled." Caelan surprised them both. "I want to speak first." The chamber was full. Dacre, Morholt, and Valen sat together. Varric stood near the center table with Orson behind him. Conversation followed Liora across the room. Caelan walked to the center before the session began. Rhydian started to speak. His son lifted one hand. "Please." Rhydian stopped. Caelan faced the council. "I used to make servants afraid because I knew they could not answer me. I made some of them cry. I made Liora bleed." His voice shook once. "I thought being afraid meant I was allowed to make everyone else afraid too. She taught me it does not." His eyes found Liora. "She did not weaken me. She was the first person who expected me to become better." No one spoke. Caelan returned to his father's side. Then Liora stepped forward. Lord Dacre frowned. "The council has not called you to speak." "No," Liora said. "You called me dangerous before you knew what I was carrying." She placed the evidence box on the central table. "I am here to show you." Rhydian did not speak for her. Liora opened the box herself. "This vial contains what remained of the tonic Prince Caelan was given before the preliminary shift evaluation. The black wax band tied around its neck was already there when Orson brought it into the training chamber. It bears Lord Varric's double wolf personal seal, including the defect in the left wolf's ear. After Caelan drank, I sealed the stopper separately with linen and wax marked by the edge of my nursery badge. One shift instructor witnessed me do it. The instructor stood from the rear bench. I did. May Rowan received the vial with my seal unbroken. She documented both marks before opening it. Lord Varric's authorization band remained intact. Master Senric then compared the contents against verified Royal Apothecary stock. Senric stepped forward. "The tonic contains concentrated moonroot." Liora placed 3 duplicate dispensing sheets beside the vial. "These records are separate from the seal on the vial. They show 3 moonroot releases from the Royal Apothecary." She pointed to the authorization entries. Each release was entered under Lord Varric Blackmoor's authorization. Then to the receiver line. Each was collected by Orson. Every face turned toward Orson, who went pale. This proves nothing beyond a lawful medicinal request, Varric said. Cynric swallowed. It was not lawful. Cynric nearly faltered. Liora said quietly, "Tell them. Moonroot cannot be administered to an unshifted royal child without healer supervision. Lord Varric told me it was part of a private royal treatment. I released it. I should not have." Rhydian spoke for the first time. "Did I authorize that treatment?" "No." "Myest, did any royal healer?" "No." Liora kept her eyes on Varric. May Rowan and Master Cynric confirmed that the tonic preserved from the trial contained a concentration dangerous for a child who had not completed a first shift. Maya confirmed it. The silence that followed was different from the silence at Liora's humiliation weeks earlier. Then, she had stood while powerful people decided what her scar meant. Now they waited for her to finish. Varric looked at Rhydian. "You would accept the word of a rejected Omega and a frightened apothecary over your own blood?" Liora answered before the king could. "You do not have to accept my worth." She touched the vial, then the records. "You only have to look at your seal and read your authorization." Rhydian ordered Varric removed from the council and detained pending formal charges for unauthorized moonroot use, concealment of a controlled substance, and endangerment of the royal heir. Orson was taken separately. May's note about the similarity to the unidentified compound, found after Queen Eloin's death, was entered only as grounds to reopen that investigation. Nothing more. For the first time since the royal meal, Lord Dacre addressed Liora directly. "Mistress Vale, not Omega, not rejected. Her name. The council will retain the vial and records under neutral custody. That is why I brought them." The room itself had changed. Later, during a recess, Rhydian found her beside the western gallery. "I abolished the law. That was the right thing to do. I lost 3 houses. That was the cost of doing what was right. Not payment for me." He accepted the blow. "I know." Rhydian's voice lowered. "I called what I did protection, because admitting it was control would have required me to stop. Would you have stopped if I had not left?" A long silence. Then Rhydian said, "I don't know." It hurt, but it was true. For the first time, Liora believed the answer, because it did not ask her to forgive him. The council bells sounded. They returned to the chamber. Varric was gone. The sabotage was exposed, but Lord Valen stood with the revised succession document in hand. "The withdrawal of support from Houses Dacre, Morholt and Valen remains in effect," he said. "The Winter Moon trial proceeds as scheduled. If Prince Caelan fails, succession review begins immediately. No extension, no safety net." Caelan looked at his father, then at Liora. His shoulders straightened. "Then I won't fail." The Winter Moon rose over Frostmere 3 nights later. By dusk, the lower courtyard had been cleared, and the old shift circle opened beneath the eastern tower. Torches burned along the stone walls, but no one spoke above a murmur. The council stood on one side of the ring. Rhydian stood on the other. Liora remained near the healers, not beside the king. That distance was deliberate, and Rhydian respected it. Caelan waited at the edge of the circle, in a plain, dark training tunic. No ceremonial cloak, no crown. He looked 10 again. Rhydian approached him. "You do not have to prove anything to me." Caelan looked toward the council. "Yes, I do." "No." His father crouched, so they were nearly eye level. "You have to decide whether you are ready to try." Caelan swallowed, then nodded. "I want to." Rhydian stood and stepped back. The bells sounded once. Caelan entered the circle. For the first few breaths, nothing happened. He closed his eyes, inhaled slowly, released. Again, the same grounding Liora had practiced with him in the nursery. Then the moonlight reached the silver marks beneath his feet. His shoulders tightened, gold spread through his eyes. A murmur moved through the council. Caelan heard it. His breathing broke. Liora saw the exact moment memory overtook the present. His hands curled. Bones shifted beneath the skin. Someone behind Dacre whispered, "He is losing it." Caelan flinched. His wolf surged harder. Rhydian took one step forward. Stopped. Every instinct in his body told him to enter the circle, seize control, order the healers closer, command the room into silence. Instead, he looked at Liora. Can you reach him? Not an order. A question. Liora chose. She stepped toward the edge of the circle. Caelan. His head jerked toward her. Stay back. No. His voice broke. I'll hurt you again. You might. Fear widened his eyes. Liora did not soften the truth. But fear does not get to decide what happens next. His breath came ragged. Look at me. He did. What are you afraid will happen? Caelan's jaw shook. I'll become her. The old belief. The old terror. Liora held his gaze. Then become yourself. Something changed. Not magically. Not all at once. Caelan stopped fighting the wolf as though it were an enemy trying to escape him. He breathed. Once. Twice. The gold in his eyes deepened, but panic did not. His spine arched. Dark fur spread along his arms. He cried out, but he did not run from the sound. The transformation continued. Rhydian stood motionless outside the circle, hands clenched at his sides. Liora stayed where Caelan could see her. No closer. No risque. The final shift came with a hard shudder through the boy's body. Then the circle went quiet. A young black wolf stood beneath the winter moon, small compared with a full-grown alpha, unsteady, breathing hard, but fully shifted, and still himself. Caelan lifted his head. His pale gold eyes found Rhydian first, then Liora. The Alpha King lowered his head once to his son, not as king to heir, as father to child. The courtyard erupted. Councillors stood. Guards struck fists to their chests. Even the houses that had withdrawn support could not dispute what they had witnessed. Prince Caelan Blackmoor had completed a controlled, full shift. No extension was needed. No succession review could begin. Hours later, Frostmere was still celebrating. Liora packed. She folded the few dresses she had left at the castle and placed them into the same small bag she had carried through the gate days earlier. Caelan had asked if she would stay. She had told him she did not know. That answer was still true. The trial had changed Caelan's future. It had not changed what Rhydian had done. By dawn, the celebrations had quieted. Liora crossed the inner courtyard and walked toward the main gate. Rhydian was already there. Alone. The gates stood open behind him. He moved aside before she reached him, not blocking the road. I want you to stay. Liora looked past him at the road beyond Frostmere. And if I don't, you leave. No guards? No. No order? Never again. She searched his face. And what happens to us? Rhydian's answer came slowly. Whatever you choose. No promise that he deserved her. No demand that she believe him. No crown hidden inside the words. Liora tightened her hand around the strap of her bag, then walked past him. Through the gate. Rhydian did not call her name. She kept walking. 10 steps. 20. The road curved gently downhill between frost-covered trees. He could have followed. He did not. He could have sent guards. He did not. For the first time since Garrick had rejected her, since Frostmere had stripped a badge from her chest, since Rhydian had signed away her freedom, no powerful alpha stood between Liora and the life she could choose for herself. She was free, completely. The realization hurt, then healed something. Liora stopped. Behind her, Rhydian still stood inside the open gate, waiting for nothing he had the right to expect. She turned. His face changed when he saw her coming back, but he did not move toward her. Liora stopped in front of him. Courtship. He blinked. What? If I stay, that is where we begin. A pause. Slowly, Rhydian breathed out. Slowly. She stepped back through the gate. By her own choice. Months later, spring light filled the eastern corridor. A young maid hurried around the corner carrying a silver tray. She nearly collided with Caelan. The tray slipped. Cups scattered across the stone. The girl went white. Caelan stopped. Once, that silence would have terrified everyone nearby. Now he crouched, picked up the first cup, then the second. "Are you hurt?" The maid stared at him. "No, Your Highness." "Good." He took half the tray from her and carried it toward the kitchens. Liora watched from the end of the corridor. Rhydian stood beside her. He did not take her hand. He only held his out. Liora looked at it, then placed her hand in his.